Are you alright?
Yeah, I'm great. What could possibly make you think otherwise? We've made it to the last pip card. The Ten of Swords is certainly one of the less cheerful images of the tarot, but don't be fooled. In the last card we were in the midst of despair, but with the 10 we're at the end of the ordeal. Beaten, yes, but at least it's over.
You seem to have a very strong connection to this one.
Yes, I've made it to the final pip card in the suit of swords, so that image is basically me right now. Waite sees a prostrate figure pierced by all the swords belonging to the card. So no swords belonging to any other cards can be found here, although I'm not entirely sure if that's very comforting to the poor guy with 10 swords in his back. We've got the black background again, so we're definitely dealing with some negative vibes here, but on the plus side we can also see the sun shining in through the distance. In fact, the sun plays a very important role in the correspondences for this one. From that we can gather that we're no longer suffering in the quagmire of foulness, but we're now at the bitter end. So I think the conclusion of a painful episode in our lives is what lies at the very heart of this card. We've been through some rough times and now we've got nothing left in the tank, but thank goodness it's over.
Are you just going to keep hammering that point home?
I just feel like I really want to emphasise the fact that we're at the end, but it's probably time to move on. Rachel Pollack says, just as the 10 of Cups showed joy overflowing, so the 10 of Swords fills us with pain. Despite the extreme picture, the card does not represent death, or even especially violence. It signifies more of a reaction to problems than to problems themselves. That brings us to a different meaning of the card, the idea of the subject making a bigger deal out of something than it really is. You know, like when someone's just milking the situation for all the attention they can get.
Woe is me, for my body is so frail and weak.
For God's sake, Frank, you've just got a cold!
Overreacting is another important aspect, and I'm sure we've all been through times like that. When we're tired, stressed out or hungry, it can be very easy to freak out over the silliest little things.
What do you mean you've run out of special sauce? That's it, my life is over.
Sometimes getting inconvenienced in any way can feel like the very gods have turned against us, but it can become a problem if it's taken to the extreme. Maybe a careless word from someone has brought us to tears, or maybe we've said something stupid, and now we can't sleep for worrying about it. Now, this isn't to say that it's never appropriate to have strong feelings about something. We're talking specifically about those times when the reaction is way out of proportion to the situation.
Oh, I don't feel stable.
I think you're just overreacting.
The Thoth Card's another crazy one. Harris went for an orange and yellow colour scheme that also hints at the sun rising in the background, but the swords are a bit all over the place. Milo Duquette says, can you find 10 swords in the 10 of Swords? It's very difficult. 3, 4, 5. It's not immediately obvious, is it? Maybe Crowley can help us out. He says the hilts of the swords occupy the positions of the Sephiroth, but the points 1 to 5 and 7 to 9 touch and shatter the central sword 6, which represents the sun, the heart, the child of Hokmar and Binar. The 10th sword is also in splinters. I'm having a bad enough time without having to play Find the Sword. He says it is the ruin of the intellect. I'd certainly go along with that. Seriously though, it's pretty obvious that we've got the hilts laid out as the Tree of Life on this one. You know how I've said that I feel like every time I make one of these videos I feel like I live through the card? Well, in a letter to Crowley, Lady Frida Harris said, I have done the 10 of Swords, and promptly Russia takes up arms. See? It's not just me. He goes on to say it represents the damping down of the creative impulse, weakness, corruption, or mirage affecting that principle itself. The Sforza and Marseille have put their final sword onto their cards, making this the ultimate in flowery and swordy designs. Chances are you'll probably recognise the image on the Solar Busker card. This is definitely where Pixie got the inspiration for the Waite-Smith 10 of Wands. His trousers are looking a bit threadbare, but at least he's wearing them, so we're on the up.
Let's cry! Nature will no longer be an attentive mother to us, and polished iron becomes indispensable for us in order to grab for our subsistence and defend our possessions.
I think he's suggesting that we cry for a bit and then we take up arms. Didn't expect that when I got out of bed this morning. Maybe it's going to kick off at the post office.
The Hermetic title for the 10 of Swords is Lord of Ruin.
Well, I think that title tells you everything you need to know. We've been through what is by far and away the most miserable and stressful section of the tarot, and now it's all ended in ruin. Bet you're really glad you clicked on this video. However, the good news is that once you've hit rock bottom, there's only one way left to go.
Sideways?
Yep, I'm sure we all know that aphorism. The only way is sideways. When we're at our absolute lowest, we can at the very least know that we can't go any lower. That place is the very bedrock of our lives, and the perfect surface to bounce back from. Alan Partridge once said, "People do bounce back." Dennis Hopper, Rolf Harris, there are others. Hasn't aged very well, that particular quote, but the point is that once we've hit rock bottom, the only way is up. The title of the Thoth card is just ruin, so I'm afraid we're getting ruined across the board with this one, but the sun in the background on both cards is showing us the way. Crowley says the Ten of Swords is called ruin. It teaches the lesson which statesmen should have learnt and have not, that if one goes on fighting long enough, all ends in destruction. Yet this card is not entirely without hope. The solar influence rules. Ruin can never be complete because disaster is a sthenic disease. As soon as things are bad enough, one begins to build up again. Sthenic? Sthenic. Okay, where's the dictionary?
The Ten of Swords corresponds to the Gemini zodiac sign and is ruled by the sun.
So we're still hanging out with the Gemini twins, but now they're getting themselves a nice tan under the sun. We've talked about how Gemini is the intellectual sign that's also quite playful and curious. The sun in astrology is considered to be the central principle of the self, our core essence and conscious awareness. In this regard, it's interesting that we were just talking about hitting rock bottom, because you could view that as the time when we find our true selves. When we can't go any lower, we're pretty much at the foundation of our being. Sun in Gemini personalities are said to be highly intelligent, social and engaging people who adapt well to change. However, on the negative side, this coupling can also be overwhelming in terms of conflicting ideas or too much information, which can lead to mental exhaustion. Also, the dual nature and multiplicity of Gemini hints at the multiple swords plunged into the subject. Like there's an information overload, and it's resulted in a sense of betrayal or defeat. The good news is that the adaptability of this pairing can manifest itself as the ability to learn from challenging experiences, and indicates the end of cycles and potential for renewal. Ten of Swords notable people include first woman elected to US Congress, Jeanette Rankin, Marxist revolutionary Che Guevara, and actor and all-round oddball Shia LaBeouf. Just do it!
The Ten of Swords resides in the world of Yetzirah and sits at the 10th Sephira of Malkut, at the very bottom of the Pillar of Mildness.
We've come crashing back down to earth with this one. Malkut is the sphere of the material world and physical manifestation. It's right at the very bottom of the tree of life, so again it fits with the idea of hitting rock bottom. In some ways you could view this as the harsh realities and challenges we face in the physical world. Israel Regardie says pendant to the system of the three triads and synthesizing all former numbers is Malkus, the kingdom, the 10th Sephira. Malkus is the world of the four elements, matter in its entirety, and all the forms perceived by our five senses, summing up in a crystallation the former 9 digits or series of ideas.
The Ten of Swords herb is ephedra. This herb is a powerful stimulant and can help with weight loss.
Ange, I think I took too much again.
But what does it all mean?
Well, if you've made it this far, I think you'd have to be pretty confused not to have some idea what the Ten of Swords is about. Waite says, whatsoever is intimated by the design, also pain, affliction, tears, sadness, desolation. It is not especially a card of violent death. So obviously Waite's making the point that we're not talking about actually finding yourself impaled by 10 swords. That would be a pretty rough reading if that's what you came away with. The card may be all about being at our lowest point, but it also signifies the end of the ordeal. It's the logical conclusion to the story of the swords. The sun rising in the background reminds me of the quote, "The night is always darkest before the dawn." Things have a tendency to get worse before they get better, but even in the darkest circumstances, there's always hope. We've just got to ride it out and wait for the sun to come back up, like it always does. Another meaning for this card is what we were talking about earlier, the idea of someone being melodramatic and over the top. That's something to bear in mind when this one comes up in a reading. Are we making the situation worse than it really is by overthinking and catastrophizing? Rachel Pollack says it takes only one sword to kill someone. The 10 swords in the man's body, even including one in his ear, suggest hysteria, and that no one has ever suffered so much as me. My life is over, and so on.
This card warns you that a person whose ill will you do not believe will harm you if you have not met his wicked designs.
Why do I have to meet his wicked designs? The reverse Ten of Swords can indicate a moment of clarity in all the suffering, a time when we start to see a way out. Waite says reversed, advantage, profit, success, favour, but none of these are permanent, also power and authority. And so I think Waite's making the point that we need to be mindful of whatever got us into this situation in the first place and be careful we don't make the same mistakes again. Rachel Pollack says turn this card around and we can imagine the swords falling out of his back. Waite describes it as success and advantage but not permanent. These ideas suggest that when a situation changes, the problems may go away for the moment. Things might be improving, but if we don't learn from the ordeal, then there's every chance that we'll find ourselves back on the ground with 10 dirty great swords in our back. She goes on to say the card bears a relationship to the 10 of Wands reversed, where we saw the danger of picking up the sticks again once the situation has calmed down.
In the reverse, this card signifies authority, success, and advantage.
Finally, a happy ending. I've always said Tallula knows his stuff.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. The man was clearly a genius, and I'll be sticking with his interpretations from now on, every time.
Our designs are manifested in this way by the symbol of the 10 swords, which imply to us that a 10th will suffice for the defence of the whole.
Well, maybe not every time. The big takeaway from the 10 of Swords is hitting rock bottom. Things seem to have got as bad as they could possibly get, and now we're at our absolute lowest. Now I sometimes make fun of the idea that these times create an opportunity for growth, because people keep banging on about it all the time. But that is the reality of the situation. We may not be in the mood to hear it at the time, but feeling destroyed means we've now got the chance to rebuild ourselves, better and stronger than ever before. Emil Durkheim once said, when this ultimate crisis comes, when there is no way out, that is the very moment when we explode from within and the totally other emerges. The sudden surfacing of a strength, the security of unknown origin, welling up from beyond reason, rational expectation and hope.
Oh dear, can't wait to pull that card in a reading. If you're suffering from any kind of ordeal, may the coming days bring an end to it. Until next time.